Thank you, Robert, for the intro, and Richard for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. And I want to keep the spirit of agility that Robert started. And as I was building my talk, so as you can see, this is like about accelerating learning, designing and decision-making in organizations, connected with the idea of socio-technical systems and all of that. But as I was doing it, I realized maybe I shouldn't just be talking on how architecture can help us on that. So for the people that came in and wanted to listen about me talking just architecture as an enabling team and how we should go into that, I will still touch it a bit, but I will be talking about broadly other topics that are really interesting for us to keep in mind if we want to move to this idea of sustainable learning, designing, and decision-making in organizations. Because the more I work with clients, the more I think and look at this topic, and for example, team topologies, been working a lot on that, and you can see that the book talks about this idea of fast flow of change. Like how can organizations respond faster to challenges on their environment, but not just fast, sustainably. Like not just doing a project, we are very quick to doing that, and then, well, next project we are basically struggling with that. And the idea is, if we want to go into that idea of being able to achieve sustainable fast flow of change, I keep on coming back to this idea that we need to invest on how can we sustainably learn, but not just learn, also design and decide. So how can we bring that into our organizations? So today I'm going to be talking a lot about this. I hope I inspire you and get you to think about this too. Because whether we like it or not, organizations that are not working on that, basically creating ways for sustainable learning, design, and decision-making, they will eventually struggle to respond to their environment. We are not anymore on the 90s where we created a CD-ROM and we shipped it away to customers and then they will just use it. We are continuously updating and changing our products, and it's a different world. And to illustrate a bit this idea of continuous learning, handling complex situations, I want to talk a bit about this picture. Can anyone guess where this is? Amsterdam, yeah. It's just to make some conversation with you. It could be Denmark. Denmark is also very popular on having great bikeways, etc.
But it's not snowing.
Yes, I was going to make a joke with that because you couldn't guess Amsterdam by you cannot see, but it's very blue sky. So that's not also the most typical Amsterdam sky. But what happened here is I was just going to the park with my two kids here on my cargo bike, which for the ones that don't know, it's like a bike with something where you can carry kids and all sorts of things. Extremely nice and not very agile in some situations, but I was just going to the park and suddenly I got this huge queue where I never get this queue of bikes. And yeah, but you can see that people are relaxed. No one is like panicking. Everyone is taking pictures because normally we don't get a queue on this place. But basically, I'm fascinated with the cycling culture and systems we have in the Netherlands. And in Amsterdam, it's a small city. If you have been there, it's not a big city. Probably not too different from Vienna. I don't know exactly, but the thing is, we have invested on a nice structure of pathways for bikes. And somehow, people cycling there, they can find their way and address this sort of challenges. Like here, I never got this queue here, but I just stopped my bike, took a picture. I will use it in a conference one day. And yeah, we were just waiting for that bridge. There was a boat passing by, a big boat cannot go underneath the bridge. And so we were just waited. We handled this situation. Because in time, as we experience this idea of living, this life of living in a city with many bikes, people just start getting used and learn from that and handle, so design and decide how to handle this situation. And this brings up something, I want you to think a bit about this, a nice definition I found about learning. So what's behind learning? Sort of learning is a process that leads to change, which occurs as a result of experiences. And this, as we learn more and more, we increase our potential for improved performance and future learning. So this is like a continuous thing that keeps on going. And as I was saying here, it's not just about learning. We don't want to just learn. We also want to be able to actually leverage that learning to drive our designs and our decisions. That's why I always try to talk about these three at the same time. And this is also sort of when I talk about architecture, when I keep on coming back to these three things. Normally we would talk about, hey, architects are designing, as Robert was saying, making some nice drawings, and throwing this to some teams to do something. I think it's more about combining all of these. Cool. Enough about bicycles, but I will stay in a Dutch topic. So this is the 20 years of history of bol.com, which is like the Dutch Amazon. It's the biggest online retailer of the Netherlands and Belgium. As you can see, they started roughly at the same time, end of the 90s. Amazon also started. I don't think Jeff Bezos was on a cabin. They apparently were on a cabin somewhere. But basically, you can see here the history of this company, which I worked for 5 years between 2017 and 2022. So on the top, you see like what were the sorts of things that they sold or they started selling in time. Like they started with books, kept on adding things. You see somewhere there alcohol. There, 2018, they started selling alcohol with shoes. So I don't know what happened to those teams to decide that combination. But here on the middle, you see services that were added to the company. Like here, nice one, 2011, business could sell on this platform, and other things like handling logistic aspects of these sellers on their platform. And here on the bottom, you see like significant events. Like they extended to Belgium, they were bought by a big holding in the Netherlands that has like supermarkets and many retailing things, which meant they got also a lot of money to invest and grow even more. So this is like roughly the 20-year history of this company. And when I talk about learning, I want to just also, they had no clue that this was going to be their history. They were just selling books at the beginning. So what I experienced on this company, and I will come back to this company as I talk more later, was that from the early days, and when I arrived it was a bit later, but apparently they had always this idea of experimenting and learning, what works and what not, and just go with that. And this is extremely important on nowadays, because as I said, we are not on the business of just shipping CD-ROMs to our customers anymore. We are on this sort of loop of continuously being in touch with an environment that is changing continuously. Our customers want new things or different things. We need to listen to that. We need to experiment and see, do they really want this? We need to test, etc. So that's informing what should be our response eventually, on what products should we be building, etc., etc. And giving some background of what are we talking about here. Maybe some of you have seen this picture before. Anyone has seen this? Yeah, so it's becoming more and more popular. So this is the Kinevin framework by Dave Snowden and friends. And basically what they realized, or they started to synthesize in this framework, is that we tend to have like domains of things we are working on. Here you have clear, so things are very clear. We can just use, say, best practices and sense what's going on and decide on what we are going to be building. There it becomes a bit more complicated, but we can still use experts and best practices to come up with ways of solving problems. So that's predictable. There we have predictability. We know what we are handling. But when you have domains on this part, and actually many companies have things there and things here, but we have a lot of our work here on this part, which is unpredictable things. So most modern organizations, as I'm trying to emphasize here, they tend to have a lot of things here on this part. So the best practices, the experts, just designing something on a room and then throwing it and, okay, let's go alive with this, it doesn't work anymore. So we need to probe, and probe, it's basically experiment, it's touch, it's go and face our customers, do an A/B test, do whatever techniques we can go with, and then learn from that and respond, sort of, okay, we are going to implement this because everyone is really eager to use it and it makes sense. However, many companies, many organizations keep on using the practices that we have on this part to work there. So, and this is a problem because we keep on having endless meetings to trying to figure out a complex thing when we can't just do it. We will not, maybe we are lucky and once we get it right, but it's not something that we can do consistently and all the time. And this is where many companies can sort of, things can go wrong because, yeah, it doesn't work. So that sort of those more classical controlling operating models, ivory towers, architects, those ideas are not, they will not work well in this, what we mostly work on these complex domains. And to complicate things, this is a little drawing I like to use, talking about rate of change. So the orangey line you see there, this is about like the rate of change on, say, innovation on for example, on our industry, but also like the market expectations, the customer expectations, etc. As we can see, so I was born at the beginning of the 80s. I had no smartwatch, smartphone. I didn't even have a computer. We were just playing outside. Nowadays, kids are born with all of these things already in front of them, and it's roughly 40 years. So and things are not slowing down. I think it keeps on going. However, the way we do things, we are not sort of going. The rate of change is not so high. It's good to have a agile community. We are sort of making things better, but I think it didn't make it like, okay, we can do it at that rate of change. So in a sense, we have a mismatch here, right? So we want to deliver things faster and cope with that that rate of change, that demand, but we are still using these, say, older-fashioned. We still have operating models that have a lot of those old-fashioned traits of treating our, say, our things as predictable, working on those spaces on the right of the Kinevin framework. And this is going into the story that Robert was telling at the beginning. The fact that we are delivering those products, right? So you could say, oh, why are you saying, you're complaining that our organization operating models are not working? But yeah, we are making, those things are coming out of our organizations. But I believe, and I think many studies show similar things, is that we are stretching our teams and organization. And more than that, we are also creating more complex processes in our organizations to be able to keep up with that velocity, that rate of change. And as also Robert mentioned, as Conway's law will always grant us, those complexities of how we are designing our systems, they will come, of how we are designing, how we are communicating, all of those processes, they will come into the systems that we are building, the technical and the social. So I think what a third curve here, what we are doing is we are basically, as we are not embracing this change on our operating models, we are adding what I'm calling socio-technical accidental complexity. So it's not just, you could think of it like socio-technical debt. It's not, we talk a lot about technical debt, but we are doing more than that. We are creating more complexity on our organizations. We are many times blindly bringing some big frameworks that maybe we don't even need that, but that's sort of adding complexity into our socio-technical system. And this is sort of, this will increase the costs of how we can deliver those things. And it will create waste, things that I think all of us in an Agile conference are like very excited to get rid of. But it will also, as we keep on doing that, if we don't acknowledge some of the things that hopefully I will get you excited later, this will also reduce our sustainability. So sort of, we will keep on adding complexity, and it's not sustainable to keep the same velocity with the same things in our organization. And I wrote there also happiness, because people also are not happy to live on all of that complexity. Because the outcome of this is that it feels like as we want to do more and more things, and we are not changing a lot the way we learn, design, and decide, we feel that we will sort of continuously fighting against all of these things, this environment. The external one, right, so our customers, our competitors, nothing is stopping for us to catch up our breath. So it keeps on going. But also internally, because we keep on adding more things, more complexity in our system. So the next time we need to do something, we need to handle that. We need to face that in order to improve our system. So again, it seems like these more mechanistic organization structures of extreme control will limit the dynamics we need as modern organizations. And also, they create a lot of waste, I believe. So I just draw this thing there, right? So we need to start thinking more deeply on how can we make more substantial change to actually be able to achieve a more sustainable flow of change. And I keep on coming back to this, like how can we not just add a new process and try to somehow manage all of that complexity, but look a bit deeper. Like how can we change the culture of the organization, structures that then will nurture this more sustainable learning, design, and decision-making on our teams and hopefully on the organization. And one of the things that I wrote, maybe this is like already 4 years old, it's that we need to stop just thinking that we are building a technical product for a customer. We need to start thinking a bit broader, and this is where I think Robert and I met. Like, how can we basically set up our teams in a way that they can listen to the environment and then can basically operate and respond to it continuously. And owning parts of the landscape of the organization that they can sort of own and evolve. Because as I said at the beginning, this is not just a one-time thing. This is something that you need to do continuously. So this seems to be very important to think about, not just as we work on building a technical system, and we will figure out a way to do it, thinking of this like a socio-technical system. Now, enough of of challenges, and this is all pain. So let's look on some ideas on how to get there, because we are definitely doing a lot of things to get into that direction. So in a sense, I will spend the rest of the talk looking at how can we go from these more mechanistic ways of organizing and operating, of structuring ourselves, into more, say, operating models where we promote this learning and are able to more sustainably respond to our environment. And I will come back to the bol.com example, because I think this can sort of give you some, I will just walk through the history and show some examples that happened there that can give you some inspiration. I will do that by looking at, okay, how did the organization change and the ways of working? How did the technical architecture of the organization change to also cope with that? Because those go hand in hand. How architecture decision-making happens. And then these things on the bottom, these are really the events that, in a sense, drove those decisions. So, like many companies at the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, the way of working was just more like what we would call a waterfall way of working, right? So we had some projects, we had some big applications, we would just work on those on a project-based, we would release them every few months. Things were also, the environment was much, like I showed the rate of change, things were changing slower. Like we had some people shopping online, but it's not like today, right? So this company was doing a 2-hour delivery. I experienced that. It's really, you need it, and then 2 hours, it was on my door. Okay, but as I said, things are not stopping. So at a given moment, the company wanted to support sellers to sell on this platform, and a lot of things needed to be built. And that way of working, that waterfall way of working, those big monoliths, it was just a huge challenge to be able to do that. So by observing and experimenting with that idea, they realized that we really need to figure out a way of scaling this. And they started adopting Agile and Scrum. Still today, they call Scrum teams to the teams. It's like a legacy. Many of them are not even using Scrum, but it comes from there. But they also started seeing, okay, if we want to scale, we need to invest on having more autonomy on our teams, so they can work and deliver more autonomously. Okay, cool. For us to do that, we cannot just have, say, DevOps teams. So DevOps came also close to that time, because we wanted teams to basically deploy and operate the things they build. So we started introducing microservices. And here at the beginning, we had the centralized architect deciding everything and controlling what's happening. But there, in order for that to work, we had to let go a bit of that design and decision-making power. So teams were doing some of the things. So this brought the company a bit forward on that evolution graph that I showed you earlier. So they started having more opportunities to learn more in parallel. Teams were designing and deciding more autonomously. And there was a huge focus on autonomous teams. We like that. I think everyone likes that. And many organizations sort of stop on this autonomous teams. Like we have microservices, they own these microservices, they can work there. Product comes in and tells, okay, this is what you need to do. They do it. They sort of, we can manage the cognitive load. Teams have these applications, and they work on that. But this brings some challenges, because around the teams you have product managers, architects managing all the things that are happening, and teams are not always in direct contact with customer. And we tend to have these, say, product and tech silos. So this leads to sort of having these little scopes of work in the organization where teams sort of work rather autonomously. But for lack of better word, it looks like these are like ad hoc connected islands. So they are working on these little scopes of work, and then they get a message in a bottle from a product owner saying, okay, do this. And I believe this is not yet helping us to maximize learning, because teams tend to be on those things. It's sort of like, instead of having a big factory, we have many little factories. And they just are good at doing that little thing. So what to do? So the organization, after a few years, started realizing it was a problem. And the interesting thing is, there is nothing wrong on what I said as an evolution step in an organization. But we need to keep on listening to the awkward interactions, like what are things that are not working? And then also looking at, okay, can we get the people that are working around, instead of just doing all the learning and preparation for our teams, actually focus on helping the teams to do that themselves? And this is what happened, say, more like towards this part of the history. So roughly when I came to the organization, it's a coincidence. It wasn't me that did this. But as you look at the microservices, we were like already 600 plus microservices on the landscape. We had 30 teams. There we have more than 100. And when I left in 2022, it was close to 200. So this is hyper growth. A lot of things are happening. And what we realized there is, well, having all of these little islands is not allowing us to respond well to the environment, because teams end up then requiring to collaborate with other teams, talk with them in order to do things that are substantial, that lead to substantial value to the customer. So this leads to sort of the realization that we need to do something with this. So we learned that this is hindering us. So we need to embrace that the organization is sort of a network of teams and scopes. Looking at a single team scope in isolation tends to not be enough, eventually. Maybe at a given moment it's enough, but eventually may not. It tends to not be enough. So in this phase, you start thinking, okay, how can we enable learning and more design and decision-making that will touch multiple teams, so that the organization as a whole can achieve the goal and purpose that they have, and to respond to this environment. Because at the end of the day, the online shopping website, it's one thing. I, as a customer, come there. I'm not thinking about the 100 things that these teams are doing inside. I want to have an experience that's coherent, that makes sense for me, that allows me to do what I want. And all of these things come into the ideas of, say, more like systems thinking. Because it's extremely important to think, as Russell Aikoff said, and this is becoming like a very popular conference quote. So you probably heard it in other conferences. So a system is more than the sum of its parts. It loses its essential properties when it's taken apart. The best example I have of this is, you will not get the best restaurant experience if you ask, produce me the best dish, bring me the best wine, and somehow serve me the best way you can. No, you need to figure out that what are you bringing together, right? Certain dishes go only or should go with certain foods. The best experience is thinking about what are those things that should come together. And this is what happened at Bol.com. So what happened there was, we were looking at this idea of how can we achieve sustainable fast flow of change. So like, how can we not just having all of these teams working relentlessly on their little thing, but making sustainable change to respond to the environment. So this led to the creation of groups of teams that work together to be more aligned and having ways of learning together and define of what are we going to be doing. And some other changes happened. So you see there the 50 was, at the end we realized by looking at, using different techniques, we have roughly 50 what we called products, or you can think of it like multi-team scopes. That makes sense. And this is roughly how it ended up looking like. So we stopped having all of these teams just working relentlessly, and we started thinking, okay, what are the groups of teams that work more closely with each other, and how do they realize sort of what's the best way that I can do here on my part that improves the thing that we are building, right? Think the chefs on the kitchen cooking the dish and the people looking for the best wines. Like, how do we make the best combinations? And then we had some other things. The company grew so much that you even had like groups of these products that were sort of connected with each other, like things that were more on the experience of getting people to buy things on the web shop, or things that were more related with logistics, etc., etc. And I mentioned there too, but what started happening here was, okay, if we want to do that, but we want to have all of our teams learning maximum and be able to design and decide, we shifted the sort of the product managers, the engineering managers, all of that group of people that were taking care of product, people, but also technical decisions, into being this, the idea of an enabling team. So maybe some of you heard the team topology's definition of enabling team, which is something like a group of people that help teams to address missing capabilities or improve in general. So instead of focusing on designing the things for the teams, they are just here helping bringing the teams address challenges that the teams are facing. So this was also a very important change. This was my last work in the company. So I was leading the architects or tech leads, which each of the product teams would have some of that. And this person would sort of pair with the product manager and the engineering manager to help those product scopes to sort of have clear ideas of where we should be going, and also see what are the needs of these teams. Are there other teams that are also facing those needs? Do we need platforms that are crossing all of these things? So sensing what's going on and helping and improving. So you end up with a sort of semi-autonomous teams, because there is more alignment on, there is more focus on just having the teams doing little work, but focusing on aligning, are we doing work that is improving the system that we are building with other teams? So teams end up being more involved on those important discussions, instead of just hearing a product manager comes in and says, okay, build this and do that. So product and technology organization in this transformation also it was a way to break those silos, which is one that also it's extremely important, because we keep on having agile, we keep on doing DevOps, but it tends to just stay on the technical organization. So yeah, this is sort of a bit of like a story of evolution of organizations that are looking at how to improve the structures to learn, design, and decide better. And please don't copy this, because I'm pretty sure your organization will be different. There will be a different journey. I just want to highlight that this is a continuous journey. I think I have a few minutes left, so I want to just close with sort of bringing the big pain that I keep on seeing now that I'm consultant and I'm working with many organizations. And I see many organizations staying here on the middle. So we start doing agile, we start learning Scrum, we do a few things, but then the organizations struggle to actually make substantial change on the structures of the organization. And yeah, so this is, I really Yeah, I'm almost running out of time, I see. um, but this is, yeah. You are the one I should listen. Yeah, I'm closing. So, but this is, I just want to really stress, don't stop there. It's important to continue. And ball.com is not yet here. They can go more. I know that they are doing more. That's part of their sort of DNA. And what are a few things that you can leverage to do that? So Robert mentioned this. So team topologies is a very interesting, has been a very pragmatic way to integrate a lot of these ideas into a simple language. Like, how can we start listening to those awkward interactions? Have teams with clear scopes of work, but listen to the awkward interactions that should lead to evolution. This idea that I already, this was supposed to be my talk, actually, so you are getting a bit of that. Yeah, so...
You were 10 minutes.
So the idea of actually leveraging, shifting architecture, and I think it's leadership, people that work around the teams, from stop being those, say, the ones that are learning and designing and deciding, to actually focusing on how can we, as say, for example, here the case is a product architect that works on that product scope with these teams, how can I help them to learn that, to learn and be able to design and decide themselves? All of this work has led me to the last year or so, I'm thinking about something that I'm calling architecture organization topologies. And this is just a visualization I'm playing with. And basically, if you think about like the X that I was showing as evolution, you can see here on the left, maybe we are not even catering about architecture. Maybe at a given moment there is an architect that's helping deciding. Eventually, the teams are actually deciding, and there are places where everyone is deciding what we should be doing. So it's sort of an evolution. But what I found out is that we cannot just look at that. We also need to look at what are the sort of, on the scopes of the organization, not just the team, but around the teams, company-wide, how are we approaching that? And if we start sort of plotting where are we today and what are the challenges there and seeing how are we influencing, this one is influencing that, there is a lot of value from those discussions. And this can inform how should we be changing. My friend Nick Tune has articulated a lot of these ideas and on his book, Architecture Modernization. The book is, you can already buy it, but it's not yet fully available in the normal channels. And in order to cross that middle part that I was mentioning, organizations need to embrace that they will need to modernize the way they do architecture, the way they architect their organization, the things that I've been talking here today. And many times, they are not doing that. And it's too big of a challenge. It's too much work. So we prefer to just continue doing the little things that we have been doing up till now. This is a picture from a workshop I did with Nick in Canada earlier this year, where an organization got a bit fed up of being on that position. Endless there, we have agile teams, we do some things, but it's very difficult to now bring anything live. So we got together with 60 people, and people that never talked with each other, product and tech that never saw each other. We were there 4 days with 60 people. This was probably the most amazing workshop I did, because you could really see people realizing, wow, this is the problem. We really need to do that. Like developers realizing, but that's not my work. I should just be delivering the features that they say. And then someone else saying, why don't you tell the product manager all of the insights you have to make that better? And then, oh, yeah, that could make sense, and we are on the same company. Why don't we talk with each other? All of that. And as we do these workshops, another thing that can be useful for you to explore and look at, and also work, I'm sort of promoting now, work from Nick and I, which is this idea of architecture modernization enabling team. because it's so difficult to go through those processes, why don't we need to invest some of our people, some of our effort to actually have a group of people that can help on that, really touching the pain and going through it. Like, how can we go through that? For example, this workshop was the beginning of that. Out of that, we had an AMET, so Architecture Modernization Enabling Team, that now continues doing that. We still work with them, like helping them to go through that, because this is not going to happen overnight. And the last promotion, so if you want to go more on enabling teams, I released a video course where we go into like the journey of creating effective enabling teams. There is a discount there if you want. So like, how do we kickstart enabling teams, but then how do we take them to do this sort of big changes that we may need in our organizations? And this is my last slide. So key take home. I talked a lot about learning, about a lot of things actually. So it was not just about that little thing I was planning at the beginning, but that's part of the learning, right? So I wanted to give you more value, and this seemed to make sense. So it's fundamental that we embrace that change and uncertainty. It will not stop. It will just increase. And this should be a sign that if we are still live with our companies and our products, it's a sign that we are probably doing good. Good in the sense that we are on the right place, so we should continue. But we need to embrace that we need to make more substantial changes on our organizations to the thinking models and practices that help us notice these big changes that we need to make, so that we maximize this ability of sustainably learn, design, and decide throughout the organization. And that's it. So you can find some of my contact information here. I will be here the whole day, so if you have questions, don't hesitate on coming up to me. I think I made it right in time, right? We are back to schedule.
Back on schedule again. Thank you very much, Eduardo.
Thank you.